Over now to Jnanavaca. A very, very warm welcome from all of us, Jnanavaca. Thanks very much to come to speak with us on your chosen title, Dharna, the highest Paramita.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Arthur City. And just to say thank you very much for inviting me. It's, well, in a way, we couldn't have anticipated that we'd be meeting in the way that we are meeting, but I'm very glad that we are meeting. And actually, probably there's more of us here tonight than would have been under sort of normal, ordinary circumstances. I must say I've been taken aback and surprised by how effective online communication can be in terms of connecting with each other. So I've been a bit of a Luddite until I've been forced to communicate online. And well, it's really lovely just to see all of your faces. Many of you I don't know, and quite a few of you I do know. And yes, I hope that you're well in yourself. I hope your loved ones and family and friends are well. Yeah, but very nice to see you, however you are. And if you're joining us on the YouTube stream, welcome too. So I was due to talk, I mean, this talk was planned months and months ago. And I said that I'd talk on Dharna. And I will talk on Dharna. But I also want to share some thoughts and reflections about the extraordinary time that we're in. And also share some thoughts from Subhuti. Subhuti is the London Buddhist Centre's president, and I'm based at the London Buddhist Centre, and he was talking to the LBC Sangha on Sunday. And I wanted to, well, I might feed in some thoughts that he had and shared. One of the things I've been experiencing, I don't know if you have, in the last few weeks since the lockdown, which I can't now remember actually when it was it 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago? Time does seem to blur like one's on retreat. But one of the things that's sort of happened for me is that it's galvanized my practice. My Dharma practice seems to be alive in a way that it wasn't just a few weeks ago. I don't know if that's familiar for others here, but it's certainly true of myself, but particularly when the lockdown first happened. The first few days, the first week or so, I felt as if my Dharma practice, my meditation practice, my reflections, my awareness of other people, my sense of connection with the world and everybody around me, it was heightened in a way that I felt was reminiscent of a long solitary retreat that I did a couple of years ago. And now, a few weeks into the lockdown, I have started to feel more sort of, well, the situation for me has become more normalized, and I've found myself sort of getting back to a sort of normal state. Not quite, but heading that way a little bit. So I was reflecting, and Subhuti was also reflecting, that what seems to happen for us is that all our certainties were taken away. It's like everything, the ground beneath us was just taken away when we went into lockdown. Maybe a day or two before, everything started to, all the knowns started to crumble. And of course, that is a glimpse of how things really are, in that all of our so-called certainties are really just imagined. They're mind-made. There is no real certainty in life. Things are always unpredictable. But we tend to create a world which seems to conform to expectations, and then we live in that created, constructed world, which isn't really real. And and this pandemic, for a while at least, it seemed to shake all of those constructed unrealities and leave us more connected with the way things really are. And I think that is what some of us probably experienced as a profound sort of galvanizing of our Dharma practice. I hope that I can sort of keep getting back to that, keep remembering that, regardless of what happens in terms of whether it's pleasant or unpleasant, painful or not. At the moment, I feel very, very fortunate in that I'm well. I'm living in a community with 9 other men above the LBC, and we're getting on really well as well. So it feels like a privileged, a very privileged place to be. I'm very, very aware of people elsewhere in the world who are in hellish states, and of course all around us there are people who are grieving, who are bereaved, who are sick, who are on the front line, caring for those who are sick, and yet, so there's very, very different experiences going on for individuals. And yet there is this sense that I've never experienced in my lifetime of solidarity with the world, with the whole world. I believe 2/3 of the world's countries are in lockdown. Never in my lifetime have we been united in this way. And so there is an extraordinary opportunity for practice. I was very, very moved Sunday night. I was talking in my chapter online to Vidyadhaka, who's a friend of mine, was talking, and he lives in the community below mine, so I haven't sort of physically seen him for a while. Anyway, we were talking online, and he was talking. Now he's had the virus, and he was recovering from it. He fortunately only had mild symptoms, but was fairly ill for 2 or 3 days. And for that period that he was ill, he didn't, of course, know whether he was going to get more ill, what was going to happen. And what I was sort of impressed and moved by was him saying that during that period, he felt very, very moved. He felt connected with the world around him in a way that he hadn't done beforehand. He felt very open-hearted. There was a lot of love. There was a lot of sense of beauty around him. And yet, of course, he was very, very ill, so that he couldn't really do anything. He was in bed for 2 or 3 days. And I kind of hope that if that happens to me, well, one day, if not this virus, one day I'll be on my deathbed. If I've got enough awareness, I hope that I feel connected with the world around me and appreciative of what I've been given, and have a heart that's open to others. I think that is possible. I've watched my mother die. Well, actually, I was away on retreat when she died, but I heard about her death. And she seems to have died with a lot of love in her heart, and felt very appreciative and connected of the doctors and the nurses who were caring for her just before she died, and was expressing a lot of gratitude for everybody around her. I hope that that's what I can do, and I feel that my practice now is more than ever a preparation for that. That's partly why I feel galvanized. I've been reflecting on death in particularly in meditation, and not just death in a sort of negative sense, but with a sense that there's a reality that the physical body normally shields from us, a reality that I'll encounter when I do die, Certainly that's what the Bardo Tadol tells us, and I believe that that's true, that when the body dies, we'll be faced with, well, whether it's the white light of reality or however it manifests, we'll be faced with things as they really are in a naked way. We'll be naked. And if we can respond, open up to that, there's a real opportunity for awakening. So more than ever, I've been feeling, yes, I'm practicing for death whenever that sort of happens. I feel that whether we're Dharma practitioners, whether we think of ourselves as Buddhists or not, that the world around us is also connected with, many people in the world around us seem to be connected with the innate love, metta, that there is in consciousness. You get that sense, don't you? People want to give, they want to connect. I don't know if you saw the survey, the BBC did a survey a couple of days ago, 2 or 3 days ago, and it said that only 9% of people in this country wanted to go back to so-called normal life when the lockdown ended. So 91% of people wanted life to be different following the lockdown. And one of the things that they talked about was that they'd been experiencing more of a sense of community, more of a sense of kindness. They also talked about the air quality being better, that wildlife were returning to our society. But I was particularly struck by this sense of connection that people talked about. So I don't think we have to be Buddhists or practicing meditation or the Dharma to be feeling that this is a time where we're connected, where there's a sense of kindness. I bumped into a woman that I don't know, but who I see normally on the streets every day, and she really wanted to talk. So we stood, at a suitable distance apart and talked. And she lives on her own, and she was saying she was bowled over by the local community, bringing her things, saying she's quite vulnerable and at risk, and so she had just stayed indoors pretty much, and the local community had looked after her. People who don't know her had looked after her. So I think that there's something that most people, a lot of people, are tapping into, which is a deeper level of our minds, where love, connection, kindness, generosity, gratitude, a sense of beauty, a sense of appreciation is the natural state. That's what I feel is happening, as well as, of course, I'm not saying that that's all that's happening. I also know that there's a lot of anxiety and fear and loneliness and boredom, and then, of course, grief and despair even that's happening in the world as well. But for us as Buddhists, there's a real opportunity. One of the aphorisms that Subhuti came up with is that the virus is our guru, forcing us to see the world has changed. The virus is our guru, forcing us to see that the world has changed. And he was saying that, well, he was sort of referring to the teachings of Padmasambhava. Padmasambhava confronts people with the way things are, and he was saying it was as if the virus was doing the same thing, and in a poetic sense, seeing it as our teacher. He was also saying, yes, the world has changed. It's changed to reveal how it has always been. So it's become what it's always been, which is this ephemeral world of uncertainty, of unpredictability, of constant change, where we are also, there's no security, there's no ground in conditioned existence on which we can rest and say, take our stand. That is the nature of conditioned existence. And when we realize that, to whatever degree we realize that, we open up to something that seems to be beyond conditioned existence. And that's where we can take our stand. Of course, that for us is embodied in the three jewels. But it feels like a gap opens up when we realize the true nature of samsaric existence. A gap opens up through which, a portal opens up, through which we can glimpse a reality beyond the conditioned, the Lokuttara. And it's in that reality, which of course isn't really separate from conditioned existence, it's in that deeper underlying order that true peace, true freedom, true liberation, true love, connection, lack of separation, all of that is to be found. The true refugees are found there. Bhante, I think, used to say that the transcendental is over the horizon, it's beyond our ken, it's over the horizon. And the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, the archetypal Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, I'm sitting underneath, and behind me is a painting that Chintamani painted for me of Manjudosha. The archetypal Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, as it were, come over that horizon to meet us. The Sambodhakaya mediates the Dharmakaya. If those words don't mean anything to you, then you can ask me later. There will be time for questions. I'll leave time for questions. So there's an opportunity to not just see the true nature of the conditioned, but to step through this portal into something vast, beautiful, that is always there, but it's normally covered over by our smallness, our preoccupations, our pettiness, our cravings, our desires, and our clinging to self. And this lockdown, this period of uncertainty, has just shaken that, maybe for some people more than others. So yeah, how do we respond? Well, maybe two things. I think one thing is to really be working on our own minds to make sure that we can stay in as positive a state as we can, to stay connected with metta and with shraddha. And if we have to work, if we are facing anxiety and fear and grief and loss, to see if we can approach those states with clarity and with love, with metta. I know that's possible from my own experience. I may have talked about this before, but when my mother died, she died suddenly, and she died, I think it's about 9 years ago, just over 9 years, under 9 years now. And I was sort of thrust into a state for about 3 months of a sort of extraordinary, exalted joy. Joy isn't the right word. I don't have the words for it. It was a sort of extraordinary, blissful state where I felt it's incredibly connected with my mother. I could feel her presence. And I knew that death wasn't the end. I knew that death was not the end of consciousness because I was in communication with her. She was free of the body and the sufferings of the body. And the Dharma was vividly true. I knew the Dharma was true. And I felt incredibly blessed to have discovered in this life the Dharma, to have found the Dharma in this life, to stumbled upon it, not discovered it, to stumbled upon it. And for about 3 months, it was one of the happiest, most profound, moving periods of my life, comparable only, I think, to my ordination, when I also felt blessed in an extraordinary way. And it wasn't unmixed with grief and loss. Perhaps you've experienced this when you've lost somebody. Perhaps you've experienced it. The last time I experienced it was when Bante died, and it felt for a few weeks that the whole of our order and movement were united in appreciation and gratitude and well-wishing for Bante and for each other and for what he'd given us. I hope that rings. Does that resonate with some of you? I hope it does. I hope it resonates. So what I'm trying to say is that in really difficult times, in times where we don't expect joy or meaning, when life falls apart, there is a real potential there. And what I hope is that I and all of us can find that when and if, well, I hope we stay in touch with it all the time, but when things do fall apart, and I know some of you have been ill, and I suspect some of you will have known others who have been ill and maybe have been caring for them, I hope that we can find that sense of meaning, that meaning that goes beyond life and death and this conditioned world, and is the true refuge, is the only refuge. So yes, the first thing that I think we can do is work on our own minds, work with whatever is arising for us, and it's likely that that's going to be changing day to day as our situation changes and as we hear the news. So today I heard that a friend of mine, Dayabandhu, who's in a care home, he's got Alzheimer's. Well, what I heard is that there's now the COVID virus in the care home. So I don't know what will happen to Dayabandhu, and I can't go and see him. You know, there's in a certain sense, I feel sort of impotent, but I really do believe that metta is real. I mean, metta, our connection at a mind level is real. I know that to be true, and that's what I'm trying to do, to hold as many people in mind as I can. So yes, working on our own minds isn't really different to helping others, particularly when we're in touch with metta. But then the second thing that I think we can do is to do something outside of meditation, to do something in our daily life for others, if we can. Now that might just mean bearing them in mind. That might just mean bearing them in mind as we go about our day. But of course it can also mean phoning them. It can mean talking to them on Zoom. It can mean you know, sending a text or a message of some sort. It can also, of course, it might mean caring for them, you know, having to care for them physically. In the community that I'm in, 2 of the guys are ill at the moment. One's recovered, not with the virus, but with other things. And well, I hope that as a community we've rallied round and supported them. I think that it really is important at a time like this, when so many of us are isolated physically, to feel that we can contribute to the world, and to do whatever it is that we can to make a contribution. That might just be bearing people in mind. It might be doing something more active. It might be giving. It might be dana of some sort. So for me, I've decided that the best thing I can probably do is to try and stay in touch with as many people as I can, to support the people around me in my community, and to try and teach the Dharma, or talk about the Dharma as much as I can to as many people as I can. That's probably what I'm going to be focusing on. I was very moved to, I was telling the team this morning of something that Subhuti told us at the weekend, which was he's in touch with quite a lot of people in India, and teaching, leading study seminars for order members there. And he was talking about Arya Ketu, who some of you may know, an order member in Nagpur, who is along with a lot of our Indian brothers and sisters, who is helping by giving food, taking food parcels to some of the poorest of the poor in the slums. And Arya Ketu was going to a slum. He went to a shack, which, you know, an ordinary kind of shack, I guess. I don't know what shacks in the slums of Nagpur look like, really. I imagine it's sort of corrugated iron and whatever. Anyway, he doesn't go in. He just leaves the food, and, you know, but knocks on the door. And he knocked on the door, and there was this elderly couple who opened the door, who were both frightened, who had not gone out, who looked at him and looked at the food and burst into tears. They burst into tears, and they'd not eaten for days. And he said that seeing them moved him. It was as if they gave him a gift of opening his heart in love, in metta, in maitri, and in connection. Seeing their response and their gratitude and appreciation was a gift for him, and it taught him something. So I find that extraordinarily moving, that members of our Sangha, members of our order, are helping people in that way. I think collectively as a Sangha, if we're all doing what we can, even if that is small, and even if there's not very much we can do on a physical level, I think that we need to feel that we're making a contribution. That's such an important thing for us to be doing at this time. And it feels like that's the spirit of so many people in the world. I'm thinking of Captain Tom, Captain Tom, who's 99. You must have heard. Have you all heard of Captain Tom, who, at the age of 99, has raised, I believe, £27 million for NHS charities. He's about to turn 100, and he's received 25,000 birthday cards. 25,000 birthday cards. That is surely an outpouring of love and generosity from the nation, wanting to give, wanting to support this effort, wanting to support him in his efforts to support the NHS. He's become a sort of emblem, an icon, hasn't he, of a sort of image of somebody who is heroic, who is apparently, the Royal Mail are going to issue a stamp for his 100th birthday, a Captain Tom stamp, which is lovely, isn't it? So it's like this sense of wanting to share, to give, to reach out, to connect is all around us. It's all around us. And that's because it is innate in consciousness as well as our self-centeredness. There's this maitri, metta, and connection that is innate in consciousness. And I think that that's erupted into life, as well as all the more difficult things that have erupted. of late. So I think that that's worth us cultivating, if it needs cultivating, and acting upon, really acting upon, giving. Even I've been saying at the LBC when I've been teaching that even if you've got no money, give £1 or something, because it helps you feel connected. It helps you feel, it helps create this web of generosity, of dana. I think the fact that we're in physical isolation sort of makes it all the more poignant, these gestures of connection. Subhuti was saying something that I thought was very telling. He was saying that the term social isolation is unfortunate. It's an unfortunate term. We should have used the term physical isolation, because we need connection more than ever, and actually people are feeling connected. So there doesn't have to be social isolation when there is physical separation or even physical isolation. I think it's really important now that we find ways of staying together, and this evening is an example of that. Let me just pause. I'll pause to see if there are any questions. I don't quite know how the questions are going to work. I'd like, Vidyasaki is going to sort of be the chair, moderator, MC. So she's going to, well, she might read out some questions from the YouTube live stream, but also if you're on Zoom and you'd like to say something, to ask a question or to make a comment, you could just raise your hand and then well, she'll tell you to unmute. I'm not completely sure it'll work, but let's see if we can. It would be nice to hear from at least some of you while we've got a few more minutes, and see. And there is more that I want to say as well. So I'll come in with a couple of things probably. So Vidyasaki, I can't see you. Are you?
I'm here. Yes.
There you are. Yes.
So if anybody wants to ask a question, just raise your hand. Give me a moment or so, because I have to scan through the pages to catch sight of you.
I'm quite happy to witter on if nobody nobody wants to ask anything. That's fine too. Well, maybe while you're thinking about questions, let me say a little bit more. I think I just want to say a little bit more about the relationship of dana and of prajna. Prajna is wisdom and dana is generosity. And Bhante Sangharakshita said that in a way the path starts with generosity. Our Dharma life starts with generosity. And he said sometimes that if you can't, if you can't meditate, if you can't practice the precepts, at least give. That all of us can give something, even if it's just a friendly word that you're giving to somebody else, or a smile, or some sort of acknowledgement of friendliness. Just give. That's when, if we can give, the whole path opens up. And like all things in Buddhism, the path isn't linear in that sense, in that giving, dana, doesn't end with the beginning. It's not just appropriate for, it's not just a foundational practice, a beginner's practice. It goes all the way through. And what I've been reflecting on is that wisdom, insight, isn't really worth anything, I think, unless it communicates itself through generosity and kindness, through some sort of engagement and contribution in the world. That might be at a mental level, it might be at a mental level in meditation, but unless there's some reaching out into the world, I can't believe that insight is yet very mature, if it's genuine at all. I wanted to tell you about a dream that I had some years ago, where I was in India in the dream, and I don't remember too much about the dream. All I remember is that I was sort of waking up in bed in a sort of large hall, or large space anyway, large room. It was a sort of house, but there were other people around. And I was waking up next to this woman who I didn't know, a beautiful woman who I didn't know. And I woke up feeling very happy. And then there was some, I noticed that there were a couple of young lads, Indian lads, who, as I woke up, sort of ran off to get me breakfast, to make me some chai and bring me some breakfast in bed. And you can tell what I sort of dream about. And in the dream, at that moment, as they ran off, I felt this pang of, oh, I'm really comfortable here, and they're going off to have to get things and do some work. And I sort of nearly called them back and said, no, it's fine. You don't have to do that. And the woman who was next to me, who I think was a Darkini, turned to me, or I turned to her, and she said, no, it's fine. They're serving. This is dana. Dana is the highest paramita. You do know that, don't you, Jnanavaca? And paramita is in the Mahayana tradition, it's a perfection. It's part of the Bodhisattva's practice. And in the six perfections, actually wisdom is seen as the highest, if there is a sort of hierarchy, and I'm not completely sure there is, but I've always thought of wisdom as the highest paramita, the highest perfection. And what she was saying was turning that on its head, that dana was the highest perfection, not the first perfection, the highest perfection. And how I read that, how I understand that, is that if there is wisdom, it's a realization that we're not separate, that we're deeply, profoundly connected, that consciousness at its deepest level is not mine or yours or separate in any way. And that if we are in touch with that level of reality, then our response in this conditioned realm where there is seeming separation will be to connect and to give. That wisdom leads to dana, to generosity, and in that sense, it's the highest act, if it's based on that wisdom. Let me pause again and see if there are any questions, either from the live stream or on Zoom.
Yeah, I do have a question for you, actually. Jnanavaca, from Vinay.
Hello, Vinay.
Vinay, he says, I was wondering, what is the most important Buddhist practice? Studying scriptures or generosity, helping others by any means?
Well, you see, I think it depends, again, at what level, in that it's sort of invidious, isn't it, to say, so do both. But if we're just being generous and not reflecting on the Dharma, then our generosity remains within conditioned existence. It remains at the level of the mundane, valuable though that might be. If we're just studying the scriptures and trying to gain insight and wisdom, but we're not acting from that, then I think it remains sort of sort of intellectual level, which doesn't go very deep. So surely the most important, the highest, would be wisdom and compassion combined, wisdom and altruism, wisdom and generosity combined. That's the bodhisattva ideal. That's the enlightened state. Wisdom and, you could say, dana, generosity. You could say altruism. You could say compassion combined. And we need to, at our level, be working towards both, and studying the scriptures is part of that, and helping out and giving and serving is also part of that. And maybe at any one time, in any one person's life, there might be a leaning more one way than the other, but surely both need to be there in spirit, at least. Yeah, I hope that helps, Vinay. Yeah. So in a way, these kind of qualities that we are aspiring to, they're not really separate. They in the enlightened mind, in that sort of over the horizon land, in the unconditioned, in the transcendental, or however we want to put it, where words are not adequate, these separate qualities that seem so separate here, wisdom, compassion, generosity, love, beauty, shraddha, joy, bliss, fearlessness, peace, freedom, all of those cohere. I think that for us, they're sort of like portals. They're separate. They seem separate. In the enlightened mind, they'd be, well, who knows how they'd be, but I don't think they're separate. Yeah.
Another question. This is from Jackie.
Hello, Jackie.
She said, would you like to ask it, Jackie, or shall I read your question? I'll read your question. I'd like to know if Jnanavaca can see a way in which we won't just return to life as it was before, given other forces will be there, economic, the pace of life, and so on.
Yeah. I think for most people, the pressures are going to be immense when, some people have lost their jobs, other people are working very hard. When we come out of this state, there'll be a lot of pressures on a lot of people. More and more people will be, their threat, their livelihoods will be under threat, for example. What I think is that not just us, but us as a Sangha, not just us, we're not alone in this, have a real opportunity to hold up and highlight and promote dharmic values, and remind people that there are higher values than just the getting and spending that our culture seems so often to be driven by. And I think a lot of people are going to be receptive for a while. I don't know what that window will look like. It might be quite a long time. I don't know. I can't kind of say or predict, but I think a lot of people will be receptive for a while to the message that there's more to life. And if we can find a way of articulating that in a way that is accessible, I think there's a real opportunity to have some sort of change happening. So I think we've got a role to play, not just us. I think lots of people will be saying similar things. For us to have if we are to play that role, I think we have to be exemplifying as best we can that we can live from higher values. If we're exemplifying that and then collectively acting and communicating that, maybe there's a chance of making some change in society. Who knows? Yeah. Yeah, thank you. So I was struck today that reading that the Prime Minister has been profoundly affected by the fact that he nearly died and was saved. His life was saved by, you know, that apparently it's had a profound effect. Now, I don't know how that effect will translate into policy, if it does, but you know, there's extraordinary things going on. So who knows? Yeah. Have we got time for one more, or should we wrap up?
We do have time for one more, Jnanavaca.
Yeah, Arthur City says we have time for one more. Is there one more?
Wave your hand if you'd like to ask a question. Yes, Mike, would you like to unmute?
Yes, I think I have. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hello, Mike.
Good evening. The online sessions have proved really popular over the last few weeks. Hopefully, as we start to gain back to some degree of normality over the coming months, are there plans to continue some of the sessions online in the future?
I can't speak for the Cambridge Sangha and the Cambridge Centre, but I know at the LBC we've been really surprised at how many people have tuned in that aren't local, that aren't from London, and how much appreciation there's been from people all over the world for our online teaching. And I suspect that we'll make every effort to carry on reaching out in that way. I can't see why we shouldn't. It feels such an opportunity now, and it would be such a shame to somehow go back to only teaching people who are in the room physically. So I hope so.
Excellent, thank you.
So maybe I'll just say some final words, and then we'll conclude. I'll hand back to Arthur City. Thank you, Vidyasaki, for sort of moderating. I'm sorry if I didn't get to. I saw another hand or two, so I'm sorry if we didn't get a chance to answer, or you didn't get a chance to ask your questions. So I don't really know how to conclude apart from to say that I really, really wish you well. I hope that you stay physically well, but I also hope that all of us can somehow make the most of this opportunity where life has turned upside down. We're in a very, very fortunate state of having the Dharma, and whatever happens physically to us in this world, I think that we have this opportunity to find meaning beyond samsaric existence and to trust that. And that's always the case. In a certain sense, nothing's changed for us in that sense. We always knew samsara was a precarious place that couldn't be relied upon. But personally speaking, I feel that truth is more vividly in my mind than it was before and has been for some time. And I hope that's true for you. Let's together try and keep that at the forefront of our hearts and minds. Let's really use this as an opportunity, not waste this opportunity, to practice as intensively as we can. And then let's collectively, well, let's stay connected with each other, and then let's see if we can do something for the world on whatever scale that is. Let's really reach out as Dharma practitioners. I have one last wee story, which was that when I started working for the LBC 20-something years ago, I went to India. Well, I got ordained in India in 1999, and I was a fundraiser for the LBC then for the original Vajrasana. And there was an order member called Vivekabhadra, who's still in our order, who said to me, "What do you do, Jnanavaca?" And I said, "Oh, I'm a fundraiser." And he said, "What for?" And I said, "I'm trying to raise money for the LBC to buy a retreat centre." And he said, "I want to give." And I was really embarrassed by him wanting to give. And I said, "No, no, no." And he said, "Yes, yes, yes, I want to give to your cause." And I said to him, why Vivekabhadra do you want to give? I know you don't have much money. And he said, "Jnanavaca, I feel a connection with you, and I want to honor that connection." And then he said, "And I feel a connection with the London Buddhist Centre, and I'll never go to the London Buddhist Centre. I'll never go to Vajrasana. But if I give, I will feel a connection. I will feel like I'm part of that project." And then lastly, he said, "I want to give because I'm a Buddhist, and that's what we do." And he said that he could give £1, the equivalent of £1 a month for 12 months. And that he had to pause and calculate whether he could afford that. And that's what he gave. And I just feel very, very moved. And that was way before there was a crisis, a pandemic. That was just the act of a Dharma practitioner recognizing the truth of connection and generosity. So maybe I'll leave it there. Thank you.
So many thanks, Jnanavaca, for that. Very, very helpful, very, very instructive. I thought you really brought into focus the opportunity, the spiritual opportunity of the moment. It feels like there is an opportunity of the moment. It's a particular opportunity. And I feel like you very, very fully brought that into focus for us. I feel I felt galvanized anyway, but I feel all the more so, actually. I feel in receipt of the opportunity of the moment, actually. So thanks very much for doing that for us. And just before we close, I feel a bit funny saying this because we're doing a Dharna pitch. Jnanavaca's done it, really. So Dharna, in case you haven't come across that word, is the Buddhist word, the Sanskrit word for generosity. When we wondered whether we would continue with activities, it was clear to us that the surest option would be to close the centre. For the centre, that would be the surest thing. But we felt, no, that is the wrong thing to do. That's not the right thing to do. We are running the centre, but actually the centre is the centre of a community. That community is based on generosity. Actually, the centre exists solely because of people's generosity. So really, if we look at what we're trying to do at a deeper level, is we're trying to create a culture of generosity. Instead of sort of exchange, a culture of generosity. That is the basis of everything that we've been involved in tonight. Everybody who's contributed has been able to, because of the generosity of people before them. That all goes back to one man, Sangha and back before him. So that's what we sort of inhabit right now. We inhabit a sort of field of generosity. Let's make that continue. Let's make that continue for other people, for the future generations to come. And that's the basis on which we want to continue activities. We want to do it on the basis of generosity. So if you feel connected with what's happened tonight, as Jnanavaca says, do act. do express that connection. In that way, we extend this sort of field of generosity quite practically, but also in our minds, out to more and more people. So you may be really struggling financially, or you may be spending less than you've ever spent. So we're in very different situations, but it might be that you feel you can give £3, you can give £5 for every activity you get involved with. It might be that you feel able to make a monthly contribution to support the centre. Right now, the centre's future is dependent very, very clearly on your generosity, on your act.